live stream and record the meeting. Is there anyone else who would like to record the meeting? Okay, hearing no one. Then welcome to everybody. I can see that we've got a bunch of guests joining us right now. We've got Abby and Pat and Pam, Bob Gotti. So welcome to you all. We're really excited to hear from you tonight. So that this is going to be, I think, a really informative and nice meeting. Just to remind people, this is sort of just to give us the baseline of everything. We'll hear in as much detail as we feel like we need to from folks. We'll have a chance to ask questions, but there'll be another opportunity in our next meeting. Jane, we're going to hear in detail on the budget. Is that true?
Yes, that is true. February 8th will be our municipal and school budgets.
Okay, so that's February 8th. We'll hear in detail then on the municipal and school budget. And then our first public hearing is on March 1st. So we have a lot of work to do. And then the subcommittee reports are going to be due on March 15th. For those of you who are thinking about that already, I want to really thank those of you, all of you, because you've all jumped in and joined great subcommittees. Lauren, thank you so much for chairing the municipal with Alex and Jim and Angela, Bill and George and Mike. Thanks again for the education committee. And then we have a great planning subcommittee with Chris and Caitlin and Christina. So I think that that's going to be really, really interesting as well. So thank you all. Okay, so Jane, do you want to do the roll call?
Certainly. Bill?
Here.
Lauren Fitzpatrick?
Here.
Jim Ferraro, I'm moving in right now. Mike Gay?
Here.
George Hertz?
Here.
Angela?
Here.
Peter?
Here.
Tommy?
Here.
George Laham?
Present.
Diane McCarthy?
Here.
Chris?
Present.
And Alex.
Here.
Dina and Caitlin will be joining us shortly, and Jim is with us. Jim, are you in? Just go on off mute, Jim, for me.
I can't understand what you just said. Would you try that again?
I'm just asking Jim Ferraro to let us know that he's present.
I'm here.
Thank
Sorry.
you, Jim. No problem.
Okay, but that does remind me, we are of course all on Zoom. So if we could all keep our microphones on mute. If you would like to unmute, please use the raise hand little thing, or just raise your hand like this. If you can't find the little raise your hand thing, or I don't see it, which is more likely it, but Jane's going to help me try to be sure I always see if there's a raised hand. But other than that, let's just all keep our microphones on mute so there isn't a lot of distraction in the background. The Pledge of Allegiance, I think.
Yes.
Ready? I pledge allegiance
To
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you all. So I promised to listen in on the select board meetings and let you know if there was anything that came up there. And of course, there always is. I just want to let you know that there is, if you haven't already seen it, the health board, the Board of Health, has put in place a requirement for masks in all municipal buildings. I believe that's staff as well as visitors. Jane, you can probably speak to that unless you are in a private office. And that will go until the end of February. They may re-up it at that time, but that is currently in effect. There was a great and positive report on the maintenance of our roads. Pavement management report came in very, very positive. Westwood is, among the top towns in the state, so that was very positive. And then there was a discussion on the OPED Baker House, and we're going to hear more about that. That's both a select board warrant article as well as a planning board warrant article. So we're going to hear about that from folks who know a lot more about it. And then the last thing from the select board is that they closed the warrant, which is what we're going to talk about tonight. Any questions about the select board meeting? Okay. Dr. Iddick, we're going to open the meeting to you to discuss your 2 warrant articles.
Muting. And I would like to share my screen. Okay. So you may be able to see the warrant articles, I hope. Good evening, my name is Peter Itzig. I'm a Westwood resident, the sponsor of these articles on senior property tax exemptions that you may be able to see on the screen. And I'm a member of the Westwood Finance and Warrant Commission. Westwood has always been a community that cares deeply about our senior residents. This comment is included in a flyer sent to residents about the Aid to the Elderly and Disabled charity. That flyer also says that each year 45 to 55 residents receive assistance, with the typical recipient being 87 years old, living in their home for over 50 years. Those who receive assistance received about $1,800 in the last reported round. This is a discretionary program with funds obtained by contributions from individuals and a small amount from the town. Funds are distributed by a committee only up to the amount contributed. I understand the town is proposing to contribute a larger amount to this fund for this year only. I'm actually curious about what motivated that. But requirements for that program include means testing on income with a limit of $55,000 per year. Applicants must also have a home value less than the town average, as shown on the application form. The home value requirement alone eliminates about half of the seniors in Westwood. The income test eliminates more, but a major limitation is that of limited funds available. Westwood has over 3,000 residents who are 65 and older. A program that helps only 45 to 55 residents reaches only a very small portion of Westwood seniors. I'd like to show a different image. This is from the town meeting in 2000, where a tax exemption for partial tax exemption for seniors was proposed. And the article is here, Article 14 from the town meeting in 2000. In 2000, the town proposed to extend a tax break to a larger number of seniors by providing a partial tax exemption for seniors meeting certain criteria, including means testing only on income excluding Social Security. The proposed exemptions in 2000 did not require a means test on assets, whether on the value of the home or otherwise. The dollar limits are $2,000. That proposed senior exemption was approved by the Finance Commission and by the town meeting in 2000. However, that exemption was never implemented, as it was of a type that was not authorized by the legislature at that time and needed state approval. The legislature never allowed the proposed Westwood exemption specifically, but in 2006, they approved a very similar option as the Clause 41C.5 exemption. The state offers partial state reimbursement for towns adopting that exemption. Westwood has ignored it. The proposed articles would have Westwood adopt that exemption. The Clause 41C.5 exemption is similar to the 2000 Westwood proposal in that it is means tested only on income. It is adjusted for inflation by a COLA used by the state for the so-called senior circuit breaker in the state income tax code. This income limit counts Social Security and is currently 62,000 single, 93,000 married, and 78,000 for head of household. The benefit is also adjusted for inflation as it's tied to a calculation based on the average assessed value of homes in the town. I estimate the exemption to be worth about $2,500 for those eligible in Westwood if fully implemented at the maximum permitted level. The state offers reimbursement of up to $500 for each exemption. This compares favorably with the Westwood Aid to the Elderly and Disabled charity, which offers about $1,800 to recipients with no state reimbursement. The Aid to the Elderly and Disabled charity is good in intention, but it is underfunded, discretionary, and overly restricted. The exemption in Clause 41C.5 is more generous, is not discretionary, and comes with a partial reimbursement from the state. The town also accepts some of the senior property exemptions permitted by state law in Chapter 59. However, the exemptions that Westwood does accept are limited by severe means tests on income and on assets. The most important of these is the exemption allowed by Clause 41C, which allows a $1,000 exemption. Means testing on assets is a $40,000 single and $55,000 married. Means testing on income is a $20,000 single or $30,000 married. Westwood granted only 11 of those exemptions in fiscal year 2020. Seniors with some savings and an IRA will probably fail the asset test. Westwood also accepts the Clause 17D exemption of $175 for widows, but granted no exemptions under that clause in fiscal 2020, probably due to severe means tests on assets at $40,000 and the failure to adopt the inflation adjustments that are permitted in clauses 17E and F. The proposed exemptions in Clause 41C.5 could pay for themselves over time for two reasons. First, there is partial state reimbursement. More importantly, the exemptions will allow seniors to stay in their homes longer. This saves money for the town because seniors pay property taxes, but are light users of town services and mostly don't have children in the school system, which consumes most of the Westwood budget. Thus, Westwood benefits by not pushing out the seniors. Westwood also accepts the Clause 41A senior tax deferral at 3% interest. Means testing is on income at $58,000 or less from all sources. Due to the 3% interest rate, this is again not the most favorable version of the option allowed by the state, as the state allows an interest rate as low as 0. If the homeowner dies, the heirs are charged an exorbitant interest rate of 16% from the date of death until the deferred taxes are paid. This is not a favor to the heirs. Home equity credit lines may be obtained at lower rates, and this is probably a better option for seniors. One local bank is advertising a rate of 2.5%. In summary, the existing Westwood tax programs for seniors reach only a tiny fraction Of the over 3,000 seniors in the town, and the senior exemptions approved in 2000 remains a promise that was not kept. We can and should do better for our seniors. The clause 41C.5 exemption is a way to do this with partial state reimbursement. Over 50 citizens signed one or the other of these petitions. Had it not been for my concern about collecting signatures during an epidemic, I could easily have obtained many more signatures. This is an issue of great concern to seniors in Westwood. There are some details that I would like to mention. An important detail is that if the clause 41C.5 senior exemption is approved at the town meeting, it will need to be ratified by the voters at the next town election using very specific language that is in the legislation. Another detail is that I will not personally benefit from this proposal, nor will my wife nor any of my relatives. I have a detail about differences between the articles. The original article was submitted in May and would have Westwood accept all of the senior exemptions that it does not now accept and any offered in the future. Important options that Westwood does not accept include the most generous option permitted by the state, that of clause 41C.5. Also, the inflation adjustments allowed in clauses 17E and F for widows, and the increased benefits allowed in clause 57. I had communications with a number of people about this issue. I received comments from the town attorney, Mr. Ahern, and also had discussions with the Westwood Board of Assessors and others. I spoke with an attorney at the State Division of Local Services who was very helpful. I learned quite a bit about senior exemptions and the options allowed by the state. The town attorney specifically suggested narrowing the scope of the legal reference rather than citing all of Chapter 59 of the Massachusetts Code. The new article submitted in October reflects that suggestion. I considered withdrawing the original article in favor of the new one, but I was told that I would need the signatures of all of the original signers in order to do so. The original article is actually broader and may be helpful in the future. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter. Can you submit that that statement so folks have a chance to read it and digest it so that we can pass that along? Are there any questions right now from the committee, having heard the presentation, but not yet having a chance to sort of read the material? I don't see any hands. And so, oh wait, I do,
there.
Jim.
I'm there.
There
Sorry.
you go. Hi, Jim.
Late to the party.
Yeah.
Peter, I don't think anybody has or can't say that the taxes are too high, but I'm not sure passing the tax burden from one group to another group is beneficial. Do you have a guesstimate on how much your proposed tax offset was going to cost the taxpayers?
Let me see, okay. Now, as I said, I believe these exemptions would pay for themselves over time, and I described the reasons for that. In order to estimate the first year impact, I would need information that I don't have. It would be necessary to obtain the number of senior homeowners, their financial status, particularly their income, and I don't have that information.
Okay, thank you.
I do have the information about the number of seniors in Westwood. They are over 3,000. They are about a quarter of the voters, but I don't have information that would allow a detailed estimate of the immediate impact. It's possible that our finance director might be able to do that.
Thanks. Tom, you have your hand up?
Yes, thanks, Diane. Actually, I was going to ask a similar question of Jim's, actually of Pam. And it was a bit of questions if I could. So it was, yes, question was how or who is going to pay for that, for this? Also, is it possible can Pam possibly estimate what kind of dollars and the cost is? And also, I think Peter had mentioned some other towns, but what other towns in the Commonwealth might be doing this? And then lastly, how many residents have taken advantage of each of the many exceptions that Peter outlined? I know he mentioned a couple of numbers and all, but I was just curious as to if we had those numbers, how many residents are actually, utilizing these exemptions? And then my last question was regarding the warrant article of 2000. But I'll wait for that.
So
I've asked you enough
Tom,
for that.
that's a lot of questions, and I don't want to put Pam on the spot if she's not prepared to answer them tonight. She didn't get those questions in advance. I want to give her an opportunity if she wants to. Alternatively, Tom, what might make a lot of sense is for you to put those questions in writing, and we could, and Jim, your question as well. And that way we can get kind of really clear answers in the future, if that makes sense. But Pam, I don't want you not to speak if you want to speak tonight, but then I want you to know that you don't have to.
Sure. No, I just will make a couple of general comments if I could. We have kind of summarized the programs that the town currently has, how they work, how many people are in it, and then as well as some of the programs that we don't have, like the 41C.5. So I think we did that at a select board meeting last year, but we can make sure to get that out to everyone so you can kind of see. Just a couple of things. I think the petitioner stated that the state put the 41C.5 in place in 2006. That's quite a number of years ago, and there are only 2 communities that have adopted it. And I think that clearly shows that there are concerns with this particular exemption. Everyone wants to help a certain category of seniors who live in communities where property values are escalating, and because of the way the state assesses taxes, it's on your home value. We have to keep current with the values, and every home is taxed at that same rate. That can cause problems for some long-term senior residents who are in homes where neighborhoods have escalated around them. So we have a lot of programs in place to try to help those residents. Communities have not adopted the 41C.5 because it really is a cumbersome and flawed piece of legislation. One of the things is we can't tell you what it costs. So who pays for it? Other residents pay for it. Whatever amount is given under the 41C.5, and you don't know, every year people have to apply, whatever is given gets shifted to other residents. So you have to wait and see how many people apply. The exemption is off of the average home value in town for that fiscal year, not the individual's actual home value. So, from when we talk about the tax shift and we go through that process, the home value each year, that average home value, we would not know until late in the fall. So we wouldn't know that until the tax rate is being done in November of each year. So if you say, well, how much is everyone going to get? What's going to be their exemption? I cannot tell you that. So say for next year, I don't know what the home value, the average home value is going to be for FY23. And then if you say, well, how much is that going to cost the average residents? Again, I don't know because I don't know how many will apply. I don't know what the home value will be. So I don't know what the exemption amount will be. So it's hard to say, and that's why people have not adopted it, because you're asking for an open-ended program. You cannot tell other residents what their increase is going to be. And I want to be clear, the commercial property value does not contribute to this, as it does with everything else that's appropriated at town meeting. So that's some of the concerns. It was mentioned that the state reimburses. They only do that up to a limit. They have a limit of the number for each community. I believe Westwood's under this program is 37. So if 3,000 seniors in town apply for this, the state will only give their reimbursement on 37. So just some of the information, we'll get that out to you. But there certainly is a reason why only 2 communities in the state have adopted this. Other communities have tried by home rule petition to put their own programs in place, because again, it certainly is a concern, and people want to try to help the seniors. So others have done different programs to try to work around some of the complexities and the uncertainty that is built into this 41C.5. The reason you have to go to a state ballot, a townwide ballot for the 41C.5 is because of that, because it's so undefined. You have to make sure that everyone in town knows that how they're going to be paying for this. So other communities have tried to, like home rule petition, put their own things in place. Westwood has certainly tried to do that with the aid to the elderly. That program we've had in place for over 20 years. The state authorized that by donation only. I think you'll remember that in 2016, we went to town meeting and town meeting approved that we could go. We went and got home rule petition and approval by the state to allow town appropriation into that fund. So we can certainly appropriate dollars. We're the only one in the state who has that we can appropriate money into that. And really the goal is to get to the same group of people. So we've tried to get a program in place. Other communities have tried other things, but the 41C.5 is very difficult. And for me, very difficult to have to say to you, I can't tell you what it will cost. I can't tell you what that will add to other people's tax bills. And every year would be the same. That average home value is going to change every year. Ours has been going up significantly because of the higher home values we have in town. Our average home value accelerates every year. So a few things on that, but we'll certainly get you more information on the programs we have in place, the analysis we've done, because I think there was a different resident in town who looked at the 41C.5 and asked us about that in the past. So we were able to kind of pull together some analysis on that. And we'll get that out to you as you start to look at this warrant article.
Thanks, Pam. Chris, you have your hand up.
Yeah, thanks. I just, first I want to thank Peter for bringing to our attention some of the background behind these state programs that we think we adopted, but it turns out we really didn't. Because I think everyone at town meeting had the impression that once that warrant article in 2000 passed, that we were applying it. So thank you very much, Peter, for bringing that to our attention. I'm a senior myself, but frankly, I have never been a big fan of these programs that single out seniors and giving them tax exemptions, like Jim pointed out, that shift the burden onto other portions of the town, simply because we have aged out, essentially. So Pam pointed out that the seniors might be in a situation that doesn't apply to a lot of people, but I would be more in favor of a program that looked at people's economic circumstances and said, you know, based on your circumstances, you deserve a break, rather than just saying, based on your age, we're going to give you a break, and your heirs can therefore benefit further when you sell this enormous house in Westwood at millions of dollars, and you won't have to pay that much in back taxes. So like I said, I think there are other people in town that are deserving, and I await Pam's analysis as to how much of the cost shifting is involved here.
Great. Thanks, Chris. George, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I think Pam definitely said a lot more eloquently than I could, but this the state has a formula for taxes that is unbiased. The current proposal is a bias. It's a redistribution of wealth, or redistribution of expenses. And I'm kind of with Mr. Parita on this, where because the seniors have less income, in theory, then they get a lower taxes. Well, I mean, I'll take it to a personal level. The seniors don't have to worry about paying for college, saving for college, having kids and paying for all those expenses. They may have more disposable income. Mr. Parita's theory of doing it based on income or based on your assets, I think is a much better proposal, and maybe should be more so how this proposal should be tailored. Dr. Idit's proposal of you hit a certain age, you get a discount because you're a certain age. Well, if you were in the town and you're a certain age, you bought your house probably for a fraction of what it's worth. You know, where's the return on investment? When you're shifting the wealth to, when you're shifting the cost to everybody else, do they get a piece of the net income or the return on investment on that sale of the house? No, it's an investment you make and then your return over years. I just don't see it. I'm not an advocate of redistribution of wealth.
Okay, George, thank you. Peter, you have your hand up, I believe. Peter?
Peter, you need to unmute.
Peter? I'll tell you what, why don't we come back to you? Jane, can you unmute Peter or no? There you go.
Thank you. I wanted to reply to a comment both by Chris and by George. The 41C.5 exemption is not just based on age. It is means tested, and it's means tested based on income. Not everyone over 65 would qualify. That's, I think, an important distinction. This program is means tested.
Okay. All right. Thank you all very much. So there are questions. Please put them in writing. Get them out. Peter, please send us your presentation so people can look at it at leisure. And Pam, I know questions will be coming to you, and Peter, questions may be coming to you as well. So great presentation and great discussion. Thank you all. So we're going to move now to the select board articles, I believe, and I think John Hickey, Mr. Hickey, has joined us. I believe he's gonna lead us off, although I can't see him I see Mr. Gotti. I don't see.
John hasn't joined us yet.
He hasn't joined us yet. So,
Excuse me, Diane.
yeah.
John did send me a text. He's just stuck at work right now. So he's got a work matter that he's dealing with.
So Chris, do you want to take the lead in this, or Pam, do you, or do you want us to wait for John?
If it's okay with you, I think we can start with Pam and then go to me. And then when John comes in, if there's something he'd like to wrap up, he can do so.
That is fine, if that's okay with you guys. Okay, so Pam.
Okay, I can start off and share my screen. Or Tish, do you want to share the screen? Either want me to start with it? Oh, I can start.
Sorry. Nope. We did the same time.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So can you see that, everyone? Okay. So tonight we're just giving the brief overview of the warrant. As Diane said, the select board closed the warrant at their last meeting. We'll just have the articles listed and then we'll kind of go through those. There are 11 budget articles. There are at this point, 4 select board articles, and then there are 10 miscellaneous articles. So I'm just going to do a quick overview of the budget articles. As Diane and Jane mentioned, the budget articles will be done at your meeting on February 8th. We'll go through that in detail with all of the numbers, the overview of the budget, and all of that. But just to quickly walk through those tonight for you. There are standard budget articles that we have each year. So starting off, articles 1 and 2 are the articles that we clean up our current budget year. So we're currently in fiscal 22 that ends on June 30th. Articles 1 and 2 will make any adjustments that we might need. And Article 1 is typically a transfer from one budget to another. And then Article 2 is if we need to adjust the budget by additional appropriation. An example of that might be using free cash to supplement the snow and ice budget. Hopefully we won't have that this year, everyone knock on wood, but that would be a typical example of that. So usually Article 1 and 2, we really don't have the final amounts for you until the middle of March because we're trying to project through year end. We update that for you in the middle of March and have the final numbers before your final public hearing at the end of March. Then we move on to our other standard articles. Article Budget 3 is for the main FY23 operating budget and what we call Appendix D. So that's going to include the budget for FY23 for the school, municipal, fixed costs, sewer, all of our annual budgets. So that's our main budget. Again, you'll get a presentation on that on February 8th. We then have a series of articles 4 through 8 on capital budget. So we have some standard annual articles 4, 5, and 6. We separate those for municipal capital, school capital, and sewer capital. It is our expectation that we will be funding those at similar levels that we've done the last couple of years. The select board and with the FinCom's support and town meeting approval has increased what we've been able to do for capital. I believe about 4 or 5 years ago, we got up to a level that was more in line with our financial policies, and we're able to continue with that appropriation level in the upcoming budget year. Then we have 7 and 8 are additional capital budget articles. And those will include, we separate those if they're funded by any specific funding source, such as ambulance revenue, or if anything needs a borrowing article, that would need a separate article. So we split out those capital just if we're doing any additional projects, and again, based on whatever funding source they may have. So those are our standard operating and capital budget articles. We then have 2 more annual articles, 9 and 10. Article 9 is our annual appropriation into our stabilization fund, the town's main savings account, an important component of our credit rating. A number of years ago, the town was able to do some one-time increases, really get that stabilization fund up to a significant level. Now we just do an annual amount of $125,000 a year. We transfer in from free cash. Our current balance in the stabilization fund is about 3.7 million, which is really close to our financial policy target. So we're in great shape there. The FinCom has supported that and the town meeting, and it's really been a great process over a number of years to get us where we need to be. So we would be on track to do that annual amount in Article 9, $125,000. And then Article 10, the appropriation into the OPEB liability trust fund. Again, that was something the town began probably at this point 10 or 11 years ago, kind of had a slow, small, steady start, had a couple of opportunities, 2 one-time separate opportunities to build up to a certain level. And now we just are increasing the amount we do each year by $25,000. And that's keeping us on track on where we need to be with the OPEB liability. So significant, excellent progress made with that. In the current year, our appropriation at May's town meeting was $1.49 million. And so we would be looking to continue again, just to increase that by $25,000 to stay on track with that. And then this year we have Article 11. We're looking to appropriate into the senior aid to the elderly tax fund, $300,000. As I mentioned, in 2016, town meeting got home rule by home rule petition approved by the state permission to appropriate funds into this account. We have been doing about a $50,000 transfer into this account each year. We are looking to increase that and do an appropriation of about $300,000 from free cash into this account. Why did this came up? This came up when we were discussing, excuse me, the new Deerfield Hanlon School project. There was significant talk about what the tax impact of that project would have for some of the seniors in town. So with this article, we would propose being able to expand who is currently served from the aid to the elderly. And also as we go forth the next couple of years, not in FY23, but as we go forward and the school debt comes online and that is added to the tax bills, that we would be able to mitigate that for the seniors who are getting relief through this program. So currently our aid to the elderly does get to about 50 residents a year. It pays about 25% of their tax bill. This would allow us to expand the number, but again, also keep the amount that's being appropriated currently towards the tax bill, and then add in what we could calculate and know to be the impact from the school project. So if their tax bill would go up by, say, $200 because of the school project, we would be able to allocate the ongoing amount to their bill, as well as the $200, again, to mitigate the amount. And I just want to point out one thing, the aid to the elderly, that program requires that a town has guidelines on how the money is distributed, as well as a committee who oversees the distribution. So we have those things in place, but there are no restrictive rules, and a town could decide to expand their guidelines, age, income eligibility, all of that. And our current committee on this aid to the elderly has done that a number of times over the years, addresses the income level, addresses any other guidelines on who qualifies or not. So it's different than some of the other state programs which have no give to what the rules are. This says each town can decide what their own guidelines are and what's appropriate for their town. So that's Article 11, and that's all the budget articles. So our standard clean up the current year, vote our operating budget for 23, vote our capital, and then the last couple of articles, the stabilization, the OPEB, and this aid to the elderly. If we move on, Diane, Chris would do the next piece unless you wanted any questions on the budget.
Question.
So let's pause and see. I can't see everybody because of the, because Pam, you have a, here we go. Okay, do any of FinCom members, we have a couple of questions here. So Peter Idig, you have a question?
Yes, thank you. I hope I'm unmuted. But my question is, when will the override hit the property tax bills? And I'm actually, let's try that first, but I do have a follow-up. Should I mention it now, or let's try when will the override hit the property tax bills?
That will depend on when the town treasurer issues the debt for the project. That will not happen in FY23. And the timing of when it hits going forward will depend on the progress of the school building, when the treasurer issues the debt, and looking at that with the MSBA reimbursement, all of that.
Okay, I do have a related question, I guess. Since we're about to be hit by a large tax increase, will the town consider limiting some of the budget requests for reserve funds in order to mitigate the damage to the taxpayers?
Not to the reserve funds. We talked about that quite a bit during the school approval process. That reserve fund is critical with our credit rating, which then translate directly into lower interest rates when we borrow. So we will be doing a large borrowing for that school project. The reserve account is critical for the credit rating, and the reserve account is there to protect the town. We talked last year about maybe needing that during this COVID impact. We didn't because of some of the outside funding that we received, but it's there to protect the town and protect services and to not have service disruption during any kind of disruption that we might see to the economy.
Okay, Chris has a question. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm going to start an annual request. I don't know whether George Hirsch has made it in the past, but I'll do it this year. I would request that the select board, when they advance warrant articles for capital improvements, that they do so individually based on the improvement and not group them by funding source or division within the town that benefits from them. I think even last year we saw a group of capital improvements that some members of this commission could not support because they didn't like an individual item not because they didn't like the whole package that involved other worthwhile things. So please, please, please separate out the capital improvements so that the town can vote on them individually. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Chris. I don't see any other hands or comments, so I'm going to suggest we move on to the select board warrant articles. Who-
Pam, do you want me to share? I can
Sure.
share.
Yeah,
Thank you,
please.
Tish.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
Let's get to, here we go.
Thank you. Thank you, Tish. Yes, so we have a street acceptance for a portion of Porter Street. Our DPW is currently working with the property owners on Porter Street as well as our engineer to provide that estimate. They have a couple more things that they need to do to finalize that number, and then we'll work with the residents and provide that information to them. So this is an ongoing process, right? Obed Baker, I will ask Nora to speak to that, please.
Sure. So this is an article for the disposition of the property. As you've heard, year after year after year, the town has been bidding out the Obed Baker house and the adjacent property to that house. I think we've tried 6 times since 2014. And this time around, we had an RFP that went out in October, and we received one proposal in December from Todd Sullivan. He proposed an option for renovating and reusing the historic Obed Baker house with an addition on it for 2 residential units, one on the first floor and one on the second floor. His proposal also calls for the construction of a new commercial building on the site that would be a veterinary office. And the proposal was in the amount of $320,000, which was a bit over the $150,000 minimum bid. So he went to the select board at their last meeting and was recognized as designated developer. And now he will pursue the rest of the application with planning board and conservation commission approval. He'll need disposition approval from town meeting, which this article addresses. And then you'll hear later from the planning board about another article for rezoning the property.
Thank you, Nora. Select Board 3 and 4. We are currently in discussions on these matters, and our plan is to have something before your first public hearing. And Pat, I'm sorry, is there anything more that you would suggest for 3 and 4, Pat?
Not at this time. If we can bring them both to conclusion, we'll show you everything we've got.
And we have the select board, and we are working on a number of matters, and we have 10 miscellaneous articles. I know that's more than what we've had in the past. We are actively working on these matters, and we will update the Finance and Warrant Commission as these matters progress through the select board, whether it's going to be moved from a miscellaneous article to something specific, or if it's going to be withdrawn. We will update you as soon as we have that information from the board.
Okay, wow. All right, thank you. Thank you all. Are there any questions for Chris? On this part of or Nora, for instance, on these select board warrant articles? I know we'll get a lot more information as time goes on. I'm sure there'll be questions then. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so Abby and Chris Path, I believe, are going. I see Abby. Hi, Abby.
Hello.
Looks like you're going to take the lead on this.
Okay. Great.
Oh, there's
Thank you.
Chris. Hi, Chris.
Evening.
All right. Thank you for having us here tonight. Good evening. For the record, I'm Abby McCabe. I'm the town planner, and with me tonight is the chair of the planning board, Chris Path. I'm just going to share my screen, and the planning board has a total of 6 articles. One of them is really, the last one is a standard housekeeping one that we typically use in case we notice any typos in the bylaw. So it's really 5 articles, but let me just share my screen and pull that up. All right, can you see my screen all right? Okay. The first article, some of you that were here or participated in your December meeting, the planning board, we were before you at your December 1st meeting to first introduce this. But this article has to do, we're calling this the Mixed Use and Multifamily Residential Overlay District. This is a new zoning overlay district. The planning board is proposing to comply with a new state law that was signed into law about a year ago, January 2021. The planning board over the last several months has been reviewing the law. This law states that all communities, all municipalities that have MBTA service must adopt at least one zoning district of a reasonable size that provides for multifamily housing within a half mile of public transportation at a density of 15 units per acre. It also the zoning also has to be suitable for families with children. So the planning board has been evaluating certain properties throughout the last few months. The article that you had in your packet and what the planning board is bringing forward proposes a new overlay district over a couple locations in town. One is over the Everett Street property in town. It's commonly referred to as the Foster Block property or the Tumble Bus site. That's within a half mile of the Islington train station, also the bus stations on 1A, and then also proposing the overlay district over 2 properties where we already have residential at the required density. That would be the Gables apartment and the apartment building and the condominium building at University Station. Those already meet the requirements. So the planning board is views this as proposing the new zoning overlay district as taking credit of where we've already done that work. So since your last meeting, the planning board did receive state guidance. They're still in draft form, but the state did release more detailed guidance out to all communities in the state. They're still in draft form. The state is accepting public comments through the end of March. The planning board will be working to submit comments before the end of March, but they are proposing this article as a first step to comply, with the understanding that after the guidelines are finalized, which is expected to be in the summer, they'll review again and evaluate, and it's possible further zoning changes may be needed at upcoming town meetings. The state right now requires compliance by the end of December 2023. That's the first article. The second article has to do with the permitting process for solar arrays. The planning board's proposal is to keep consistent with what we have now, which is solar proposed on a structure can be straight to a building permit. However, they're proposing an amendment to allow when the ground mounted solar is proposed, that for small proposals, such as you would see at a residential property, that would be an administrative process through the town planner, and then also building permits. But it removes the public hearing process that right now is currently with the Zoning Board of Appeals. And then they have a new definition proposed for large scale solar, where an application for the large scale solar projects that would be more what you would see at a commercial property, or if it was a primary use of a property, that would be an application and public hearing with the planning board prior to building permits. And the intent of this article is to be more consistent with the state law that calls for not unreasonably regulating solar, because there is some protections for solar arrays. Right now, currently, the ground mounted is through the Zoning Board of Appeals. So the Planning Board has taken a more careful look at that and is proposing these revisions and proposing adding more detail on the setbacks and height restrictions of the ground mounted solar. The third article is related to the historic rehab of the Obed Baker House, which you heard a few moments ago for the Select Board's article. The Obed Baker House circled here in this image is currently on the town-owned land. It's zoned local business A, but the proposal also includes extending the local business district to the town-owned property next to it and a portion of the town's cemetery lot here to local business, and expanding, overlaying these properties as well as the adjacent commercial Westwood Plaza with the FMUOD. The FMUOD allows for mixed use. The proposal for the in response to the RFP that was received includes a small addition on the back of Obed Baker House with 2 residences and a commercial building on the town-owned lot. So that would all be a separate process, but this zoning is to facilitate that application process that would still need to go through the permit process with the planning board. Article 4 is making some changes to our section in the zoning bylaw that currently requires any expansion of a non-conforming property to get a variance for the proposed project. This zoning article adds some language to add some discretion for the building commissioner to review it, and if it's determined to be minor and doesn't have a substantial adverse impact on the neighborhood, it could be reviewed by the zoning board as a special permit rather than a variance. They're both public hearings with the zoning board, but the variance process is a lot harder, and a variance application is much harder to achieve. So this allows minor projects to still be reviewed by the zoning board, but at a higher level expectation during their review. The 5th planning board article is rezoning for the property on Providence Highway. There's an existing Shell gas station there now. The owner has recently acquired the property next to it that used to be within the town's right of way. And they would like to redevelop the property for a new gas station with a new retail building. So the proposal is to change the zoning at both of these properties so that it would be in the highway business district. Currently, the gas station is in the industrial office, which is it's an existing non-conforming use. So the proposed zoning change would bring the property's current use into compliance and matches what's across the street. So this is proposing the zoning change, and similar to the last article, a project would still need to go forward to the planning board to have that detailed permit review. And then the last article is a standard placeholder that we have for if we discover any errors, typos, numbering, formatting changes during our public hearing process. So Chris is here, and also I think Nora and Pat are here if you have any further questions on the articles.
Chris, do you want to jump in and add anything to that? Abby, great presentation as always. Thank you. Crystal clear. Really appreciate it. Yeah, great job. Chris Pareda.
Thank you, Diane. Didn't expect to be called on first. So on the first article, would the current proposal have the town conform to the law as the present guidelines are laid out?
No, not yet. Right now with these draft guidelines, the proposed article does not meet the size requirements. We did, in the guidelines, the initial legislation called for a zoning district of a reasonable size. In these recent guidelines, we've learned that it's their size requirement was bigger than we had anticipated. It's 50 contiguous acres, but also with a unit capacity number. So it's over 50 acres that that are set in the draft guidelines right now. Westwood's, the proposal the planning board's looking at right now is 16 acres total.
So a follow-up question then, given the present zoning of those parcels that you include in the proposed overlay district, could a structure be developed on those parcels that meets the current guidelines in terms of density? I know that in Westwood Station, they're already built. So I assume that already meets the current density requirement, but I'm looking at the Everett Street parcel. Would that, if somebody were to build there, would that meet the density requirement?
Yes. Right now, the way we've drafted the zoning bylaw that you have in your packet, it allows for 15 units per acre, which is what the state law requires. So we believe that Everett Street property is developable. An application could come forward with that, and that could still, if the town meeting adopted that article, the text of the bylaw and that area would comply, but right as it is right now in the draft guidelines, the overall proposed map change, it doesn't fully comply with the state's draft guidelines right now.
So here's my concern. Why do this? If knowing that it's not going to comply with the state law, and you can already do what the state law wants you to do in terms of density on those parcels, why do anything at all?
Oh, okay, I see. So right now, you cannot build that. Right now, we don't allow the multifamily at 100. We don't allow multifamily at that property right now, only under the FMUOD by special permit, and there's age and bedroom restrictions. So currently the zoning and throughout our town, we do not comply, but the draft right now partially complies.
Okay, all right.
And
Well, the only thing I'd say then is that I would urge the planning board to go back and again, if you're going to pick certain parcels to include in this overlay district, I think we have plenty of parcels there, and just string them all together until you get 50 acres. Based on what I'm only a novice at this, but I can see that we have. I mean, the guidelines even say that this isn't expecting that the towns have this development right away. This is looking 20, 30 years in the future. They want to set the groundwork so that 30 years in the future, then this type of development can be done. So I would urge the planning board to do present something that is going to put the town in compliance right away, rather than relying on either the guidelines changing or coming back and having to do another expansion of this overlay district. And I would also urge the planning board to look carefully at the definitions in those guidelines. From what I read, Westwood should be viewed as a commuter rail town, not a bus town.
So if I may, Madam Chair.
Yeah, go ahead.
Chris, I think there's going to be significant pushback on the acreage by a number of interested parties, including the town of Westwood and other cities and towns.
Like Dover?
Like Dover, I mean, and I think other interest groups like the Mass Municipal Association, I think the Mass Municipal Lawyers Association are going to have something to say about the size of the acreage that they're advocating for here. So we talked about not doing anything. But we just think this is a good first step. And let's just say, what if they come back and say, look, 50 is too much. Let's do 25 acres. We only would have to do 9 more acres at that point in time. That makes the lift less heavy for the planning board moving forward. So we think it's a good place to start. And let's see what the acreage actually is.
Thank you. Christina, you have a question, I believe.
Oh, I have so many, but I'll limit it to the relevant ones. Okay, so the 3 zoning areas that you guys have identified, I thought we only had to do 1. Are you guys doing 3 because you have to get to the 50 acres?
Yes, we only have to have 1 zoning district. We consider this is still 1 overlay district. It's just spread out. We still consider it 1 district. We've done this with other places in town. We have multiple FMUODs and more than 1 local business district. They're just spread out physically. So we're still calling this 1 overlay district, but the parcels right now aren't currently contiguous.
Now, have you guys submitted any comments to the state, given our availability of these spaces?
The planning board at their December meeting did vote to submit a first draft for an advisory opinion. So we did do that, and it was right before the holidays that we submitted that. We haven't received comments on them yet, but we will follow up. They had said they would try and look at them, but it would probably take at least 30 days.
Okay. And then finally, is there an exception process that we might be able to utilize?
They've encouraged all communities to submit comments by March. There is an interim informational form that we also have to submit. All communities submit by May 2nd, so we plan to do that. They also have said that we could submit an action plan for approval to them. So the planning board plans and intends to submit an action plan. The guidelines right now say that they're expecting everyone to comply by the end of 2023. So we think our action plan right now will say that we're starting this process now, and then we'll come forward with the future zoning changes if needed after the guidelines finalize. So we expect it may take us, all the way through 2023.
And then the final question, I know I brought this point up before, but again, Downey is just absolutely over capacity. So if we could just have more conversations with the right folks in the schools early, so that we don't have any unintended consequences, because both of those zoning districts are within that Downey district.
Yeah, so Christina, thanks so much for all of this. I think if you put these questions in writing and then we'll get them to the school so the school can answer them. I mean, we want to get everybody's questions answered. The best way to do that, to be honest with you, is put your questions in writing, submit them to Jane. Jane will get them to the right people and everybody's questions will be answered. It just is the easiest and most straightforward process. Chris, you have another question, or is your hand still up?
On number 4, I wonder if, Chris, if you could give us an example of the type of, quote, minor project, unquote, that the planning board thinks would fit better under a special permit.
Well, it's really not something that the planning board is thinking about. In 2017, we were the organization that made it more difficult to expand upon these non-conforming properties. And we asked that the ZBA require variances. It's from case law, as we understand from Mr. Ahern, through the state, that approach is not proper for property owners. So we are actually backing off of our tougher stance. And it's going to be the discretion of the building inspector as to what's minor, what's major. So we leave it to the discretion of the building inspector as to whether or not it needs to go to a variance or it's considered minor. And we leave it to the discretion of the building inspector in a number of cases in town.
Well, then Pat, can you give us an idea of the kinds of things that have come up in case law before where it's been ruled that getting a variance is too difficult? I'm just curious as to whether it's building a chicken coop in your backyard or building a solar array.
No. There's a case right on point from the SJC that's really driving this, and there's a couple cases from the appeals court that are driving it. And the case from the SJC is Bellotta v. the Zoning Board of Appeals of Brookline, 481 Mass 382, and if you want, I'll send it to you. And there's another case, Gale v. Gloucester ZBA, and that Gale, if you remember, for those who've been around, was Henry Gale and his family when they moved up to Gloucester. So I guess the best way I can describe it is the interpreting section 40A, section 6, the old rule that we have been living under, that if you're making a non-conforming lot more non-conforming, you need to get a variance. The SJC has said, no, that's not right. If it's a de minimis change and it doesn't have a detrimental effect to the neighborhood, a special permit is okay. Now, so I've encouraged, if this passes, I've encouraged the building department to think about some definitions of what de minimis and what detrimental to the neighborhood is, so that they can be consistent in their application and not get challenged from one to the other. The best example I can give you is a case where someone was looking to expand 3 feet further into the side yard setback from what was existing. That's a minimal change unless you live next door, but it's a minimal change. And we would, if we lived by the old rule, we could have stuff forced upon us that we don't really like. So this is a chance for us to try and get out in front of it. That's kind of my rationale.
Thank you.
Thank you. Jim?
Yeah, going back to number 1, from what I'm reading here, the state wants us to add 1,100 units of relatively family housing. Is that correct?
Didn't say specifically the number. We don't have to, but the size of the overlay district is based on having a unit capacity based on our existing housing units.
Well, how many units is the state looking for us to add to our housing stock?
I mean, they're not specifically requiring us to add units. They want us to provide a zoning district so that.
What would the purpose of the zoning district be if not to add residential units?
Well, the purpose is they would like towns to allow it, so then an application would come forward for to provide more housing.
Well, they're looking at a minimum lot size of 15 units per acre, and then they want 50 contiguous acres, so we can start to do the math.
Okay, hold on. I'm just looking at. Yeah, there was a little bit of a formula in the guidelines that they had, so that I think for what they're considering, Westwood is a bus community at the 20%.
20% of what?
Of the existing housing units in town.
So
Sorry,
we have
are we a bus
5,000.
community?
Westwood has approximately 5,000 housing units, so 20% is going to be over 1,000 units that they're looking for us to add. Yes. And they're looking at no restrictions, so they're looking at residential, particularly family units. Has anyone considered a cost benefit analysis to getting into this program versus what it's going to cost us to put the kids through school?
Well, one of the requirements in the zoning that we are proposing, the application would have to be submitted with a fiscal report, and it would be reviewed when we get applications. That's when we review it with the various staff departments.
But that requirement was only if you exceeded 15 acres or 15 units per acre.
Right. So, in our draft, we had allowed by right what we call a site plan review at 15 units per acre. And if an application was proposed greater than that, the draft is written so that would be a special permit application process. So,
right. So let's get back to, do we have a cost benefit analysis of this program versus the impact on our schools and our infrastructure, police, fire, et cetera? I think we already saw a greater impact on police and fire due to University Station.
If I can, this isn't a program we're looking to enter. We're complying with a law that's been passed, and a cost benefit analysis is not something we use unless we have a specific project in front of us.
Well, my understanding that this program was optional. If we didn't, this law is optional. If we didn't get into it, we weren't eligible for certain state funds.
That's not at all how it's been presented to the planning board, and that's not how the planning board was operating. We were told this was a law, and we are obligated to comply with this law. We can't summarily dismiss this because we think the penalty is not harsh enough. We feel like planning for this is something we are entrusted with the town, and that's why we move forward with this.
Well, there is the option to comply or the option not to comply. There'll be penalties if you don't comply.
I don't believe that the planning board is in a position to disregard a law simply because we don't think it's something that will benefit our town. There are many people think it will benefit our town, either financially or otherwise.
I'm not saying it's going to benefit or not benefit the town. I just want to know what the options are.
Well, Jim, I think one of the problems we have is we don't know what the numbers are going to be at the end. And I agree with you that at some point in time, if that 50 acres holds, we've got a serious decision to make as a town, whether or not we want to give up some of those programs versus complying with the 50-acre requirement. But right now, what the planning board is looking to do is it's looking to zone two things that have just recently been developed. So you're not going to get any changes there, and take advantage of some of the stuff we did down there for University Station. And we're looking at the Foster Block plant, which has been an eyesore for years. And that could be a multi-use district down there, could be a benefit to the town. So I don't think we're cutting off our nose to spite our face with where we currently are, but we'll have some decisions to make once the rules get finalized. And your suggestion that we may have to do a cost benefit analysis is well spoken.
But if you're going to zone this before the rules are finalized, aren't we putting the cart before the horse? Shouldn't this wait?
Let me answer your question with a question. Do you want to see Foster Block to sit there and continue to be a blight on the area?
No, but I don't want to see it overburdened either.
I understand.
So, I mean, I'm thinking that if the state is still revising its rules and its parameters, we should wait to find out what it does before we zone something that may be unnecessarily zoned. And then who knows where it
Jim, if
mercy.
If we're zoned and it's not something that the state believes in, then whatever we do at town meeting, the Attorney General's office will say it's not in compliance with the law. It doesn't fit. So whatever we just zoned, it's going to be backed out. It won't work.
How does that work? If we zone it for development by right, then why can't a developer, after it's zoned, why can't a developer come in and say it's zoned by right? I'm going to build whatever I want, regardless of what the state says.
Well, the state has to okay any changes we make to our zoning.
But the state's not going to stop us from changing our zoning.
Oh, they may.
They have in the past.
You know, I wouldn't put my faith in that. The state can say, hey, you want to have by right zoning, knock yourself out.
Right. The law says that all MBTA communities must adopt the zoning. So if we don't, the planning board and the town, Westwood, is not in compliance. We're not in compliance today. And the timeline they gave us really only brings us to one other town, annual town meeting after this. So
Okay.
if you wait, you really don't have much time to fully come in compliance if you want to wait all the way until 2023.
Well,
So
there's
that's
no
why-
penalty until 2023 because we have until 2023 to comply. And if we don't comply, what's our penalty?
Well, the scenario that I hear what you're saying, and I brought this up in the past, and I believe Mr. Ahern agrees with me. If we don't comply, we willfully just say, no, it's not worth it to us from a cost benefit analysis. What is to stop a developer from coming to Westwood and saying, it's now 2024, you're supposed to have a zoning bylaw in place for me to come in and build by right? Even if we successfully win in court, we still have to defend our position that we have willfully ignored this law. And a developer can easily come in and make the case, whether they win in court or not, I don't know. I'm not an attorney, but they can easily make the case to say, you're supposed to have a by right multifamily zone for a developer to come in. Where is yours? And it's been made the case in the past, if you don't zone for it in one place, it's zoned everywhere. So anywhere within that half a mile of a train station or a bus stop within town, an argument could be made by a developer. I bought this plot of land, I'm building 15 units per acre ratio.
Okay, but on that note, the state says you have to have 50 contiguous acres.
That
We
right
don't
now
have-
is a guideline.
Okay, but let's say it's 26 contiguous acres. I don't know where there are 26 contiguous acres of vacant land that a developer is going to come in. He's certainly not going to tear down the gables and start again.
Right.
So I think it
No,
limits what a developer may want to do.
The expectation, I don't believe, is that the state is going to see 50 acres of multifamily development. It's going to be, their hope is 50 acres of zoning, making it available in those areas if lots come up for sale. They may be developed that way. I don't think anybody is expecting 50 acres of multifamily zoning to be developed. It's just not reasonable. I mean, maybe Western Mass, you have that kind of acreage available within a town, but certainly not around here in the 128 area.
My point is less the number of acres, but more to, let's find out where the dust settles before we start making plans.
And part of our response when we got the guidelines was they're looking for pushback, or not pushback, they're looking for input. And our input is, we've identified this. They may very well come back. I don't know this to be true or not true. They may come back and say, you know what, for your size town, this works. We understand that, you're good. And they may make other responses similar to other towns. I don't
But then
know.
why don't we
But this is our-
finalize it at that point instead of before the state sets its guidelines, finalize it after the state sets its guidelines.
Well, they
I
gave
mean,
us.
you've already done your homework, so now it's just a matter of a vote, but let's wait until this summer to see what they say. You can have a fall town meeting or September, 2023 town meeting, and you're still in time.
I'm gonna move us along here. Chris, you had a question, I believe?
So, thank you.
Just a quick follow-up to what Abby said earlier, and that's why I urged the planning board to look carefully at the definitions that are in the housing department's guidelines. We are a commuter rail town. We are not a bus town. Yeah, we have a bus line to go through the community, but we do not have a bus station. So we are a commuter rail town. That means only 15% of our housing stock rather than 20%. It may be a big deal when it comes down to the overlay district being large enough to accommodate the number of units that they want us to accommodate. And this is for 30 years down the road, Jim, not tomorrow.
Okay, Chris, thanks. And Christine, I believe you have one other question or comment?
Yep. Just a quick comment. Again, kind of like Chris and Jim were referring to earlier. I think you, Chris, and the rest of the planning committee would be well served to get any kind of legal opinion that you guys can get on this before we rezone stuff.
Well, we've been lucky enough to have our town council, Pat Ahern, at all of our meetings. But this is a new law, so there isn't, you know, every community is going through this right now. There's no precedent because this is brand new. So we've been taking a careful look at this, reaching out. We've recently participated, you know, staff has participated in some webinars, informational sessions with the state and other communities, and all communities are going through this same process.
So let me address that. If I thought there was an expert somewhere in the state who could help us more than I am helping us right now, I would happily reach out and bring them in. The problem is no one has a lot of expertise on this, and a lot of Mass Municipal, the silence was deafening through the summer on this, on the Mass Municipal Lawyers Association. There was no feedback to be had. Now, there are some people who are seeing this as a marketing opportunity and are starting to present themselves as somewhat expert on this, but let's just say I am skeptical of the credentials they are producing for us. So I don't have a problem going outside if someone can do a better job than me. I'm happy to do that. I just don't know that I can find someone right now.
No offense intended. I didn't realize that you were the attorney. I figured this seems very complex given our dialogue here and the extra resources that we could throw this way. I think would be of benefit to our community.
Pat, if you read the draft guidelines 5 times, you'll be an expert.
I've read them 3.5 times. And I've participated in some discussions with my peers. And I got to be honest with you, when I saw the acreage guideline come out, I was shocked at the amount that the DHCD expects cities and towns to commit to this. Certainly, we have a housing problem in the eastern part of the state, but as I look around, I appreciate your comment, Chris, that it is, I think it's for now and for 30 years from now to try and stay on top of the housing, never get into this kind of position where we are in housing moving forward. But
yeah.
The acreage grab to me is just beyond comprehension.
Yeah.
And that's our hope through this process, is that we can convince whomever it is we need to convince that 16.5 acres for a town of Westwood our size is reasonable. That 50 might work for Spencer, somewhere where it's undeveloped largely, but that's part of our job here with this. And I think we're showing our working in this direction, in this way. We're showing good faith in attempting to comply with the law that was handed down a year ago. And then 11 months later, we get some, guidelines. And I believe in the guidelines, there is a map, Chris, if I was trying to pick my brain on this, somewhere there's a map as part of the guidelines, I believe, and it does identify Westwood as a bus community.
Yeah,
So
I saw that, but the definitions don't support it.
Right. Well, and so their request for 50 acres may not be supported. So we're moving forward with all of the, what's been given. We're playing the hand we've been dealt the best way we think we know how.
On the other hand, you can include the entire Frugal Fannies and auto dealership parcels that are down in that same area as Everett Street, and get your 50 acres, and they'll all be within a half a mile of Islington Station and be done with it.
All right, well, this has been a great conversation, and Abby and Chris and Pat, I do think we want to say that we are so pleased that you guys are so on top of this. I know there are towns that aren't, and they're going to be really behind the 8 ball on this, and you all are doing I think personally, and I hope I speak on behalf of the commission, a fabulous job getting out ahead of it and really helping us to understand it. So we absolutely want to thank you, and we appreciate that, and we appreciate your presentation. And are there other questions for Abby and Chris right now? Okay. Are there any questions from the public or press? Do we even have any public or press available to ask a question?
There are no questions in the chat, Diane.
Okay, great. Okay. All right. So we're going to move on to, if you guys would stick around for a minute, we are going to talk about the assignment of articles, and we're not going to do that tonight, but if I did want to just say, while you all are on, that, we've sent out the articles, everybody's seen them. And those of you who have been on the commission know the process, that at some point we're going to ask for volunteers to take on those warrant articles and write up the FinCom summary for our book. And so we're going to be looking for that at the next meeting. And so if you want to take a look at that and think about it, and then I know there are some of these really have produced a lot of questions, and we want to get those questions answered and back, so that as you think about which ones you want to take on, you sort of have the information that you need. And we are going to work closely with the select board to be sure that we finalized all those articles. So we're not working behind the 8 ball to get all of our summaries done, in a timely way. So we're not putting a lot of pressure on commission members. Jane, is that all accurate? And did you want to add anything to that?
No, that's exactly right. Our timeline would be our next meeting. We're going to focus on the budget for municipal and the schools, and both our subcommittee chairs on that are on the case already with their committees. And then the first public hearing in March is when both the planning board and the select board will come back to us with lots more information on their articles. That'll be their big night.
Okay. And Jane, tell us what you think. When will we get from the select board, everything that we need from them in order to assign folks to those warrant articles?
So, right now everybody's working behind, both the planning board and the select board are working diligently to get those write-ups done. And Pat is also working with them for the legal language on all the warrant articles. So as soon as we get, in the next, couple of weeks, that'll be probably finishing up, and then they'll get that to us, in plenty of time before the first public hearing.
Okay, and once you get that, you'll send that out to the committee. Is that how this will work?
Yes.
Okay.
We'll get
All
all
right.
of that prior to the first public hearing.
Does anybody have any questions about that? I'm new to chair. I'm not new to the commission, but I had questions that I was asking Jane about. Does anybody have any questions about that? Okay, there you go. Any new business?
Diane, I didn't know if you wanted to speak about the.
I will have some new business.
Okay, hold on a second, Peter. Yes, Jane?
Just a reminder that if members wouldn't mind raising their hand in the chat before they unmute, so we're not talking over each other, would be great. And Diane, I don't know if you wanted to speak for a minute about the new, that the subcommittee positions are all for this year are done. We had that on our agenda.
Yes, subcommittees are all done. Everybody has them. Everybody knows what you're doing. Again, really appreciate everybody's efforts on this. I'm hoping these aren't huge, heavy lifts this year. I think there's this one article for the planning board that is going to be, I think that you're going to have to slog through it a little bit and understand it. But other than that, I'm hoping it's not going to be a huge, heavy lift for folks this year. That's my hope. Let's see how it goes. But if you have any questions about subcommittees, anything, feel free to call me, call Jane, call your mentor if you're new. Everybody's got a mentor, so yeah.
And-
Okay, any questions about subcommittee assignments? Okay, Peter, you had some new business.
Yes, new business. I hope you're able to hear me. In a message in 2020, the town attorney, Mr. Hearn, referred to the history of reports on Finance Commission recommendations and said that they also do a write-up explaining their position and will sometimes do a majority opinion in support of what they recommend and a dissenting opinion for those who disagree with a majority opinion. Minority reports are not unusual and should not be taken as undermining the integrity of the commission. However, when you issue a report that disregards the views of a minority, you are inviting a minority report. A minority report does not require the approval of the majority. In the new business segment of our last meeting, there was an ambush of sorts with objections and rude comments about my minority report concerning the Hanlon override. I was disappointed by the lack of tolerance of dissenting opinions that was evident. I was also disappointed that my views were excluded from the 11-page report that was sent to the voters. The 11-page majority report of the commission on the Hanlon override is actually illegitimate as it was not approved by a majority or otherwise. In order for the report to be legitimate, the commission would need to vote on a motion to accept and approve the draft from the chair. That 11-page document should at least have been circulated to the members of the commission prior to being published as the report of the commission. I do not accept the excuse that there was not enough time to do this right. This was a bad behavior that I hope will not recur. I believe that the commission has a responsibility to inform the voters so that the voters may make informed decisions at the town meeting. The commission failed in that obligation by excluding the cost comparisons that we obtained and by excluding minority opinions. The cost comparison table is probably the most important part of my minority report that was excluded. That table should not have been hidden from the voters.
Peter, I believe you've discussed this last week.
Yes,
and,
I have.
I would like to thank you for your
Yes, I know.
comments.
You allowed my critics to criticize me at the last meeting. I think you should allow me to respond.
I did allow you to respond at the
I do
last
have-
meeting,
I
and
do have
I
a
don't
couple of
believe,
additional comments and a motion that I would like to present.
well, then make your motion, please.
All right. The criticism that some people confuse my minority report with the report of the commission is frivolous. It is difficult to misconstrue minority report to mean.
Peter, if you have a motion, would you please make it?
Yes. The motion is that the commission accept and approve the draft report on the Hanlon override from the chair as the majority report of the commission. Is there a second?
I believe that's my role. Are there any comments on the motion?
Yes, I have comments.
That's your motion, Peter. You can make a comment on your own motion.
Okay.
Are there any comments on the motion? Is there a second for the motion? Jim?
I don't understand. He wants us, Peter, you want us to approve a report that's already been accepted?
Already been issued.
It's already been issued.
Yes, it was
So-
never approved. It was never approved by the commission by a majority or otherwise.
I understand your theory, but isn't that,
Not a theory.
well, okay, but isn't it moot now?
No,
George Laham, you have a comment?
I was one of the people that spoke up, so I feel like I want to make sure that the point is made. A minority report, and I went to town hall to ascertain this, is not a report of one. First of all, it has to be a report at the discretion of the chairperson. That's the first point. A minority report is at the discretion of the chairman. Point number one, not argued. You can't really dispute it. It's a fact. Point number two.
I disagree.
In my opinion, excuse me, Peter, we let you speak. Excuse me. The second point is that a minority report is very worthwhile. I agree. When you have a vote of 6-4, a vote of maybe 7-5, not when the vote is 9-2. And I also believe that one of the two didn't fully understand, and if there was an option for her to abstain, that's what she would have done. So a 9-2 vote is not really warranting a minority report. And I believe what the objection was, and I won't speak for any of the other people that brought it up, but my objection was there was a representation made that a minority report was approved by the FinCom, and it was sent out to the town with the FinCom with your name associated as FinCom as an official representation. That was my objection. It made us look like a dysfunctional group. I don't want to be part of a dysfunctional group, and I don't appreciate somebody giving that impression to the town. That was my point.
Thanks, George. Can I ask if there's a second to the motion? Okay, hearing none. Let's move on to the approval of the December 21 meeting minutes.
Excuse me.
I'm sorry?
Excuse me for interrupting. I just wanted to clarify that the vote was a 10-2 vote. Just George Laham. Just so we're clear that it was
Okay.
a 10.
Okay.
My apologies.
No worries at all.
Okay, let's move on to the approval of the December 21 meeting minutes. Can I have a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Any comments on the minutes?
Yes, I have comments on the minutes. I have objections to the minutes and would like to propose amendments. First, I object to the paragraph beginning Ms. McCarty misspelled concerning the discussion of my minority report. That paragraph is inaccurate, one-sided, and contains false statements. I particularly like the concise summary of my reply as, quote, Mr. Ittig replied, period. The reported comments read as a vicious and ad hominem attack on me by individuals opposed to my views. Publishing them will make the Finance Commission look vindictive, petty, and foolish. I move to strike that paragraph from the minutes. Is there a second?
Okay, are there any comments on this motion? Is there a second to the motion? Okay, moving on.
I also have another.
You muted yourself. Okay,
I have another objection to the minutes.
go ahead, please make your motion.
Motions must be accurately reported. I move to amend the minutes to correctly state my motions. There are two that are not correctly reported. They are incorrectly summarized. Motions should be presented accurately in the minutes.
What's your exact amendment to the minutes?
My amendment is that I move that the minutes be corrected to correctly state my motions.
Is there any comment on that motion?
What needs to be corrected? What's the incorrect verbiage versus the correct verbiage?
I have, my motions were not stated. There's a, let's see, I can, just a moment. I can read the correct motion, which I have in front of me.
No, can you just paraphrase what's incorrect from the minutes?
In the minutes, it says, Mr. Iddick made a motion to amend the minutes to add the members who are not present as voting at the public hearing. That's not the motion that I made. That's someone's summary of what they think I said.
What do you think you said?
What I know I said was that the minutes should be corrected concerning the vote on the override to state that the vote passed with 10 members in favor, 2 opposed, and 3 not voting. I made another motion that is not reported in the minutes. That motion was to amend the minutes to state that the report of the Finance Commission that was mailed to the public about the Hanlon override was not reviewed or approved by the Finance Commission prior to publication. Both of those motions should be stated exactly in the minutes and not paraphrased. And my motion is to correct the minutes to do that.
Any other comments on that motion? Is there a second to that motion? Okay, can we move? Oh, wait, I'm sorry, Chris, I didn't see your hand.
No, I just wanted to say, Peter, I know you didn't disagree with me, but the way you phrased your motion, it is factually incorrect. It implies that those 3 non-voting people were there and chose not to vote, and that's not what happened. So I think we should leave the minutes as is.
Okay, thanks. All right, can we move then to?
No, I have one other objection to the minutes.
Is there a second to the approval of the minutes?
Second.
Can we do a roll call, Jane?
Can we discuss the minutes following the second? I have another objection to the minutes. I have a concern about the minutes. This relates to a citizen that I spoke with who complained that the documents seen by members of the commission and discussed at meetings are often not available to the public. Those shown are often difficult to read in both the TV and online presentations and are not shown in the minutes. That person complained about what she sees as a lack of transparency on the part of the commission, and I agree. I would like to suggest that in the future, such documents be attached to the minutes so that they may be seen by the public. In addition to that suggestion, I wish to make a motion to attach to the minutes of this meeting the documents on senior property tax exemptions that I sent to members last week. Is there a second?
Are there any comments on that motion?
Yeah, I have a comment. Peter, did that individual request from you or anybody on the commission to see whatever document they had trouble viewing elsewhere? And was that denied?
I reported a comment by a citizen that I spoke to. I don't know which particular document was being referred to.
I'm quite confident that any citizen who requested to see a document we presented in this commission would have quick and swift action to be able to review that at their leisure. So I just don't know that somebody would complain about that without requesting and being granted access to the document.
Okay, great. So I believe, if I'm not mistaken, although Jane, tell me if I'm wrong, have I missed something here?
So Peter's third motion, did you ask for a second on that?
Oh, do we have a second on Peter's third motion to amend the minutes?
Just a quick question before you go to that. Peter, you're requesting to attach the documents that you supplied to us for review for this meeting to be attached to this meeting, to be attached to this meeting's minutes.
Yes, so they could be seen by the public.
You're not asking to be attached to last meeting's minutes that we were just talking about that you're objecting to. You're talking about this current meeting's minutes.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
And Peter, you said you sent them out to the FinCom. Do you mean that I sent them out to the FinCom in this packet?
Yes, you sent those documents to members, but the public has not seen those documents, and I would like them to be available to be seen.
Yes.
Okay. All righty. Thank you all. Now, is it time to go back for, I believe I got a second on the approval of the minutes. So now, Jane, is it time to go to the roll call?
As long as everybody's ready to vote on the minutes, you can go, because Jim seconded the motion to approve the minutes. So as long as everybody's ready for that.
We
can
ready?
call the roll.
Okay, let's go, Jane.
Peter, Peter, you have your hand up still. Can I remove that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Oops, excuse me.
That's all right. And I'm going to mute you. Okay. Ready? We're going to, so the motion to approve the minutes. I'll start with Bill,
Yes.
Jim Ferraro,
Yes.
Lauren Fitzpatrick,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
George Hertz,
Yes.
Angela,
Yes.
Peter,
No.
Caitlin,
Yes.
Tom Kilgariff,
Yes.
George Laham,
Yes.
Diane McCarthy,
Yes.
Christina,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Alex.
Yes.
So that's 13 in favor and 1 opposed. That passes.
Okay, now, I believe, do we get a motion to adjourn, Jane? Is that the next thing we
Well,
do?
actually, Jane, we didn't address Peter's request to attach the documents to this. That was a new motion, a new business, correct?
Yes, that is a new motion.
It was, nobody seconded that motion,
Okay,
Alex.
that's
So-
fine. I just wanted to make sure that we went through that process of asking for a second, because I added the clarity of that is not for this meeting minutes that we just approved, but for the next meeting.
Yes, and this is Diane's call, but and certainly would be able to post that information onto our website so that the public can see it. We also, every presentation from the select board, from the planning board, all of that all goes up on our website. And I would encourage any member of the public, any resident who can't find something or is looking for information, please reach out to me. I would be, or anybody at Town Hall, Abby, Tish in the select board office, any of us would be more than happy at any time to supply any information to residents. We certainly, the FinCom, that's why we exist, is to represent the residents. So we would, more than happy, anything you can't find. And I'll, as long as Diane's okay with that, I can post that up to our website.
Absolutely. I mean, I hope that Mr. Iddig gives us his report in writing, and we'll post that as well.
Absolutely.
Tom Kilgariff, I think you have your hand up.
Actually, what Jane just covered was my question. I was hoping Jane could walk everyone through what the public access to all the board's documents are. And if it, so that's great. So she answered it. So thank you.
Yeah, that includes everything else too. The town clerk's office.
Right.
There's such a willingness to provide, and I think we do on a very consistent basis to all residents, but particularly I think we take pride in the FinCom to make sure that anybody who has any question, we're providing all that information.
And it's a pretty sound historical archive too, isn't it, Jane, in terms
really
of
is.
minutes, a lot of documents, they go back
Yes.
probably multiple years, it seems like. Right?
Yes. Diane, before we close, there's a question in the chat. Do you want me to read it or would you like to read it?
Go ahead.
It's from Jamie Allen. Jamie, I just need you to put in for me your address, please, and then I'd be very happy to read your comment. We need your full name and address so I can read this.
Does everybody have access to the chat?
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So she doesn't want to give her full name and address. We all see her comment, right?
Yes. But if
Yeah.
he or she would like to, I'd be more than happy to read it.
Yeah, thank you, Jamie. All right. Are we now? Is there anything else before we adjourn?
I motion to adjourn.
Ah, Jim, you're the best.
Second.
Do we have a second?
Second.
No, that person did enter an address and name. I think that citizen deserves a response.
Okay.
Peter,
Shall I read? I can see the citizen's name.
just just for the record, I was gonna do that before we left, so we've got that. It's Jamie Allen at 530 Pond Street. And what she's saying, he or she is saying the FinCom seems petty and the minutes are paraphrased with a bias. Disappointing. Thank you, Jamie, for your comment, and thanks for adding your address.
Thank you. Okay, Jane, do you want to
So
take the roll call?
I didn't hear who, Jim made the motion to adjourn.
I seconded.
Thanks, Alex.
Mhm.
Bill?
Yes.
I'm sorry. Bill, Jim Ferraro,
Yes.
Lauren,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
George.
Yes.
Kurt, thank you. Angela,
Yes.
Peter,
Yes.
Caitlin,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
George Lehan,
Yes.
Diane,
Yes.
Christina,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
and Alex.
Yes.
And time is 7:56 and we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you all.
Have a
See
good
you on
night.
February 8th. Stay warm.